ある若者の家を訪ねた。
どうも、はじめまして、ごめんなさい。本日ありがとうございます。ここ最上階ですよね。綺麗だなぁ。ベイブリッジが。
黙々とパソコン画面に向かうこの若者。
UFJ。セーブさん。1億4000万。
Meet Takashi, a 46-year-old Japanese day trader who made an astonishing $153 million in his early 2000s. Sounds unbelievable, right? But here's something even crazier. His trading capital is just $10,000 that he turned into $150 million in only 8 years. In an apartment high above one of Japan's busy cities, a man in a messy t-shirt sets aside his cup of ramen and powers up his computer. He glances at the screen, cracks his knuckles, and gets ready for the day's work. This man is Takashi Kotegawa. While he might look like an unlucky programmer, he's actually a multi-millionaire and the world's top day trader. Here's the unbelievable but true story of how a broke college student from Japan turned just $13,600 and into an astonishing fortune of over $153 million in only 8 years. Chapter 1. In the vast expanse of the early Japanese internet, one site stood out, a message board called Touchin. Touchin was the forerunner of the notorious 4chan in the West, and used the same type of messaging system as its successor. Users posted anonymously, although some chose nicknames to identify themselves among their internet peers. Among the countless anonymous users, one nickname stood out, BNF. While his parents named him Takashi Kotegawa, the world knew him by just 3 letters. To understand why, we need to look into his background. Takashi grew up in Ikakawa, Chiba, Japan, and moved to Osaka for college when he was 20. Back then, he was just like any other college student, floating through life and always short on cash. He never imagined he would one day make a huge impact on the economy, but life has a funny way of changing people. One day, while watching TV, Takashi saw a special report on the Japanese Broadcasting Corporation about stocks, investments, and finance. He was captivated. The allure of the stock exchange and the excitement of the high-stakes world around it fascinated him. From that moment, Takashi knew what he wanted to do. One trader in the documentary, Victor Niederhofer, an American hedge fund manager who lost $50 million in a single day, particularly caught his eye. Takashi admired his lifestyle and was inspired by him. Inspired by his work in the market, he decided to honor him by adopting his initials. Because the Japanese language doesn't have a V sound, Victor Niederhofer became Victor Niederhofer ENF. Embracing his new identity and purpose, BNF was ready to take on the world. However, he didn't just want to enter the finance world in the usual way. He craved freedom. BNF wanted to make a name for himself while earning enough money to never worry about finances again and live life on his own terms. He didn't want to follow the system like everyone else. He wanted to beat it. BNF wasn't the first young college kid with big dreams, but he faced a significant hurdle. He had no training or experience in the stock market. Additionally, he didn't come from a wealthy background. He was broke. To achieve his goals, he needed to learn everything about trading and develop a successful strategy. So BNF started working part-time to save money for his investments. Between shifts, he read textbooks on stocks and analyzed market movements to understand how to make the best bets. After 2 years of hard work, BNF had saved $16,000 and was ready to step into the tough world of trading. It was the year 2000. While the world celebrated the new millennium, Japan's financial sector had been struggling for the past decade. Since an asset price crash in 1991, the Japanese economy had been in a tailspin, stagnating while the rest of the world grew. This period was known as the lost decade in Japan. At 22, with no formal experience, BNF entered this unforgiving, stagnant market. It was the mother of all bear markets, but BNF saw an opportunity where others saw disaster. He aimed to make millions, not despite the bear market, but because of it. BNF knew he needed sharp discipline and focus. He had learned that panic and loss of concentration were the quickest ways to lose everything in trading. Fear and panic were common in the bear market. Inexperienced investors often pulled out as soon as a stock dropped in value, trying to cut their losses, which usually led to worse outcomes. BNF knew better. If he could keep a cool head, he'd find the best ways to profit from a situation where everyone else saw only losses. That's all well and good, but what strategy did BNF actually use to take advantage of the market? It's called contrarian investing. Basically, he was looking for short-term rebounds. BNF would analyze the trends of a stock, see if the stock dipped below 20% of the 25-day moving average, then make his decision and try to capitalize on the short-term recovery after its dip. At first, BNF wasn't exactly successful, but he knew that was okay. He'd learned the value of patience and fully understood he wouldn't become a master at something overnight. It was only once he started to learn to read and analyze each sector and attribute numbers and factors for each one specifically, rather than employing the same strategy for everything. With this new approach in mind, and a bucket load of new information at his fingertips, BNF started trading again, and soon was making more money than he was putting in. The first true test came in 2001, a year into his trading venture. The market had turned more bearish than it had ever been due to a crash in penny stocks. While everyone else was buying into the frenzy, BNF kept his cool. He hadn't come so far to sell out his principles and betray the strategy that had garnished him success up until now. It was tempting to follow the trends and buy into these juicy deviations, but BNF was his own man. He passed on his stocks, rebounded, and netted plenty of earnings while the mob chased the thunder and fell off a cliff. BNF was rising to the top. In just 2 years, his bank account had gone from $16,000 and to a whopping $1 in million. From his apartment bedroom, BNF had become a millionaire with some unconventional trading. He'd made enough money to secure his freedom and enjoy his life, but BNF wasn't the type to rest on his laurels. He enjoyed the thrills of investing too, and made plans to push his earnings even further. Soon, he'd be taking the step that pushed him from a successful trader to a legend of the finance world. In 2002, the effects of the dot-com bubble were slowly fading, and the world economy recovered. The markets pulled out of their bearish state and went on to a bull run instead. Great news for the world, but terrible news for BNF. Remember, he made his fortune by taking advantage of bear markets. To this day, he still claims it's far easier to earn money through trading during bear phases than in bull runs. But BNF hadn't come so far just to give up now. He improvised and adapted to the new environment. He knew his old strategy wouldn't work in the new market, so he began to watch the stock exchange carefully. BNF noticed that while core companies rose with the index, they didn't all rise at the exact same time. To take advantage of this sharp rise, he'd watch one core company's stock skyrocket, then preemptively buy another that had lagged behind. There are a few things that set BNF apart from the rest of the finance world. Not just anyone can make $1 million from their bedroom after all. As mentioned earlier, BNF could turn on a kind of laser focus mode where he was totally in the zone when trading, able to make the best bets with the most up-to-date information available. His rational, ice-cold thought process had kept him afloat when everyone else had stumbled back in 2001. Perhaps his most valuable asset, however, was his ability to sense opportunity and know when there wasn't one. BNF wasn't so prideful nor so stubborn that he couldn't change up his strategy to benefit from a market that wasn't his forte. Per the words of the ancient Greek historian Polybius, a good general not only sees the way to victory, he also knows when victory is impossible. In fact, BNF had done more than survive during his bull run. He'd positively thrived. 2 years on, his net worth had grown to $11 million. In 2005, something happened that made the hairs on BNF's neck stand up straight. He sensed the opportunity of a lifetime, the opportunity to make him rich beyond his or anybody else's wildest dreams. JCOM, a communications firm, had just gone public on the Japanese market. Shockingly, their stock dropped by an astronomical amount. It was all down to one slip-up. One of the employees at Mizuho Bank had been told to sell one share of JCOM at 610,000 yen, but had inadvertently done the opposite. He sold 610,000 shares for 1 yen each. 1 yen. Now, the price limit system of the Japanese stock exchange meant that the value of a stock couldn't fall to such an absurdly low level in just one go. Still, one share was now worth a minuscule 80.56 yen, less than $1. Other investors saw the drop, but figured it had to be some miscalculation or attempted fraud. BNF knew better. He showed no mercy and struck, buying 7,100 shares of JCOM with most of his portfolio, giving him 49% control of all shares. Mizuho had no chance but to agree to a settlement with BNF, and they bought back the shares he'd swiped from under their noses at a ludicrously high 975,000 yen per share. With all his shares sold, BNF made a profit unlike anyone had ever seen, over 2 billion yen or $15 million. This one trade, this one godlike opportunity BNF had capitalized on, cemented his legacy as a legendary day trader. He'd achieved his dream of breaking the system, all thanks to his steel nerves and laser focus. This was a victory of unimaginable proportions. If you've learned anything about BNF so far, you know that he wasn't ready to stop there. He loved the thrill of the game and planned to take it all the way. The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, however. BNF was about to swallow a bitter pill. He had never once tasted defeat. Chapter 3. If you were too young to remember the financial crisis of 2008, suffice it to say it was a time of pure chaos. That isn't meant in a dramatic way either. The burst of the U.S. housing bubble triggered the worst recession the world has ever seen since the Great Depression almost 100 years ago. It was the mother of all bear markets. Fear, panic, and all-around hysteria were rampant. BNF saw a treasure trove of opportunity before him. If he profited in 2000, what could he accomplish now? He scoured the market, looking to make his first move. His target, Lehman Brothers Bank. Lehman Brothers was a titan of the banking world at the time. It was the fourth largest investment bank in the world, standing side by side with giants like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs. They had taken a massive hit from the crisis, so BNF employed the same strategy he'd used back in 2000, buy when stocks are dipping and wait for a rebound. So he invested $6.05 million, knowing that a bank of that magnitude would eventually bounce back. If you've never heard of Lehman Brothers, there's a good reason for that. If you've heard of the bank, you're probably shaking your head right now. BNF had made a critical mistake. He'd assumed a bank so big in the American market could never fail. But in the world of finance, nobody is safe. Nobody is too big to fail. Ever heard of Barings Bank? A 230-year-old giant of the UK institution was brought down almost overnight by one rogue trader back in the 1990s. The financial crisis was brutal, and not even Lehman Brothers could survive. The bank collapsed, and every cent BNF had invested was gone. He had just lost $6.05 million. It was a catastrophe. He had brashly invested in a market he knew little about, betraying his principles. In his darkest moment, BNF licked his wounds and turned back to his principles. He stayed away from the U.S. markets and returned to the Japanese stock exchange. The 2008 crisis was hitting Japan hard by then, and BNF was determined to set his mistake right. This time he knew the market. He was aware of the ins and the outs, and he doubled down on the strategy that had garnered him so much success back in the earlier days. It was tough going at first. BNF was betting on a major rebound for core Japanese companies, but it didn't really seem like it was going to happen. Prices kept plummeting, and all around him, his peers were panicking. But while values were plummeting, BNF took a deep breath and kept to his values. The laser focus that had made him millions all those years ago returned to him. BNF's belief in himself paid off. The market surged again, and he made millions, $12 a million to be precise, close to the JCOM trade that had made him so famous to begin with. His crown had slipped, but with some quick thinking, it was now firmly back on the head of the best bedroom day trader in the world. And he kept on winning, learning from a slip-up, and never giving up his passion for investing. During this whole time, he made an earth-shattering $153 a million in only 8 years. He's still following his passion for trading today and continues to make millions of dollars every year. Still, he hasn't forgotten his roots and stays humble. He purchased an expensive apartment but doesn't bother with extravagant luxuries. To BNF, happiness isn't a fancy car or the latest fashion. It's those little green numbers racking up on the screen as the stocks climb in value. BNF is a god amongst men in the trading world. He built his empire with only $13,600 in savings he made working odd jobs at college. From broke college student to multi-millionaire, the world is his. With that genius mind and never say die attitude, who knows how far he'll go in the future. And remember the lesson both BNF and the world learned back in 2008, no one is too big to fall. But what lessons can we learn from BNF's successes and failures in the world of trading? Have you ever invested in the stock market or thought about it? What strategies do you use or plan to use? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section below. And if you found BNF's story as captivating as we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content like this. We are Moneymakers, and thanks for watching.